I never meant for any of this to happen. It was supposed to be a fresh start, just me and Lily, escaping the chaos of city life for something quieter, simpler. But the move to Black Hollow, Vermont, didn't bring peace. Instead, it dragged us into a nightmare we never could have imagined. I had always been close to my younger sister. Lily was the dreamer, the one who saw the world with wide-eyed wonder, while I was a practical one. But that night changed everything. It started with the wind, that chilling autumn wind that seemed to whisper through the trees, making the shadows of the dense woods surrounding our cabin stretch unnaturally long. We had settled in the cabin for a few weeks now, enjoying the quiet of Black Hollow, the thick, golden air of the countryside, and the haunting beauty of the forest. But there was something off about this place, something we couldn't shake, no matter how hard we tried. The cemetery, the one we'd been told to stay away from, stood at the edge of the woods, hidden just out of sight behind a screen of overgrown trees. The locals didn't talk much about it, but their cold stares whenever they mentioned Black Hollow Cemetery made it clear that it wasn't a place anyone should venture near. That night, the wind howled louder than it ever had before. It rattled the windows of the cabin, making the walls creak and groan. I had just turned off the lights when I heard it, high-pitched and haunting, a scream. Not like any scream I had ever heard before, but one that seemed to slice through the very air, sending a shiver down my spine. I jumped up, the pulse of panic rushing through my veins. My first instinct was to check on Lily. She was standing at the window, frozen, her face pale, eyes wide with terror. "I saw someone," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Someone was digging in the cemetery." The words hit me like a slap. My heart hammered against my chest as I tried to process what she was saying. I took a few steps toward her, glancing out the window. The darkness of the cemetery loomed in the distance, but I saw nothing. The trees were still silent. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. She nodded, her eyes fixed on the graveyard. "I saw them, someone with a shovel, digging. I swear, Mara, I saw them." I tried to calm her down, but there was no convincing her. Something about the way she spoke, the terror in her voice, made it impossible for me to dismiss what she was saying. It was as though she had seen something that defied explanation, something I couldn't ignore. "I'm going to check it out," I said, my voice firm. I grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer and pulled on my jacket, trying to shake the unease that had settled in my gut. "Stay here, Lily." Lock the door behind me. She nodded, though her face remained pale. "Be careful, Mara." I stepped outside, the cold air biting at my skin. The flashlight's beam sliced through the darkness, illuminating the path ahead. My breath fogged in front of me, and the wind whipped through the trees, making the branches sway in strange, eerie patterns. The cemetery was just a few minutes away, but each step felt heavier than the last. I reached the old wrought iron gates, which creaked as I pushed them open. The cemetery was as silent as the graveyard it housed. There was no sign of anyone, no movement, no rustling leaves. Only the faintest disturbance in the earth caught my eye. A freshly unearthed grave, the mound of dirt still fresh and dark against the otherwise untouched ground. I took a step closer, my flashlight flickering nervously in my hand. The grave seemed wrong, as though it had been opened with malicious intent. But by whom? And why? My heart pounded, and I suddenly felt as though I was being watched. A chill ran down my spine as the feeling of dread intensified. Something wasn't right here. I turned and began to make my way back to the cabin, but the uneasy feeling lingered. My mind raced as I thought about Lily. Had she really seen someone? Or was it just her imagination running wild? When I arrived back at the cabin, my stomach dropped. The door was wide open. I rushed inside, calling out for Lily. There was no answer. Panic set in as I searched every room, but she was nowhere to be found. Her things were still there, her jacket, her shoes, everything she would have needed to stay inside. But Lily was gone. My mind raced. Had she gone after me? No, she wouldn't have left without a word. I ran outside again, scanning the surrounding woods with frantic eyes. The silence was deafening. Not a single sound, no rustle of leaves, no crunch of twigs beneath her feet. Nothing. I stumbled back to the cemetery, praying I would find her there. But as I neared the gates, something caught my eye, a small porcelain doll resting on a disturbed grave. Its eyes were wide and glassy, its mouth frozen in a permanent, eerie smile. I knelt down, trembling. My hands reached for the doll, and I felt a cold shiver run through my entire body. The hair on my neck stood on end as I realized something chilling. The doll was familiar. It was Lily's. A wave of horror washed over me as I clutched the doll, my heart sinking deeper into the pit of dread. "Lily!" I screamed, hoping against hope that she would somehow answer. But the only sound was the wind whispering through the trees. The next morning, the authorities arrived. They scoured the woods, searched the cabin, but found no trace of Lily. Not a single clue that could explain her disappearance. The only evidence that remained was the doll, left atop the grave, staring up at me with its cold, empty eyes. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had taken Lily, that she was somewhere, trapped, lost in some twisted corner of Black Hollow. The locals whisper about the legend of the grave digger, the ghost that roamed the cemetery, forever cursed to dig the graves of the long dead. They said that anyone who saw him would disappear, becoming part of the cemetery's cursed history. I couldn't let it go. The guilt gnawed at me, consumed me. I had to know what happened to Lily. I had to find her. So I stayed. Years passed, and I became the cemetery's caretaker. It wasn't a job anyone wanted, but it was mine now. I couldn't escape it, not until I found her. Every night, I walked the cemetery, my flashlight cutting through the thick darkness. I searched every inch of the graveyard, hoping to catch a glimpse of Lily, but I never did. All I found were the shadows, always watching, always waiting. The weekend started as a harmless escape from our daily lives. Ethan and I, best friends since childhood, had both been dealing with the weight of our separate worlds. His was a life of constant pressure from family expectations, while I had just experienced the death of my mother, a loss that hollowed me out in ways I didn't know how to express. So, when Ethan suggested we spend a couple of days at his uncle's farmhouse in Blackstone Valley, I jumped at the chance. The small, secluded town had its own eerie reputation. Whispers of ghosts, strange happenings, and abandoned ruins hidden deep in the woods. It sounded like the perfect distraction. Ethan's uncle, a gruff, weathered man, greeted us warmly but with a strange wariness in his eyes. "Stay clear of the woods after dark," he warned. "Don't go near the crypt. It's best left forgotten." We laughed it off, assuming it was just one of those superstitions the locals love to spread. But even with that warning hanging in the air, we couldn't help but be intrigued by the legend of the crypt, a place that housed the restless spirits of those buried long ago, their graves marked only by crumbling stones. The fact that it had been untouched for generations made it all the more enticing. That evening, after a few too many drinks and much laughter, we decided to make our way into the woods to find the crypt. Our excitement was blinding, and we didn't think to question the dread that had settled over the farmhouse. The lantern flickered in the heavy night air as we walked through the forest, the path barely visible beneath layers of fallen leaves and thick roots. The trees seemed to crowd in around us, their gnarled branches twisting into strange shapes in the dim light. Each step deeper into the woods made my pulse quicken, but I chalked it up to the cold and the unfamiliarity of the dark. Eventually, we stumbled upon it, hidden beneath a blanket of moss and overgrown vines. The crypt's entrance was barely visible. Stone slabs, chipped and weathered by time, formed an archway. It looked like a place that had been forgotten by the world, and for a moment, I almost felt like we were intruding on something sacred, something that had been sealed away for a reason. Ethan, ever the skeptic, laughed and stepped forward, his voice low. "This is it, Sarah, the famous crypt." I nodded, my heart pounding, but the thrill of discovery was enough to push aside the creeping sense of dread. Inside, the air was thick with mildew and decay. The walls, covered in ancient markings, seemed to pulse with a faint energy that I couldn't quite explain. It was quiet, too quiet, as if the crypt was holding its breath. The silence pressed against my ears, making every small sound seem louder. I could hear my own heartbeat thudding in my chest, and for a moment, I regretted coming here. That's when I saw it. A shadow, just a flicker at first, but then it seemed to shift and move along the back wall of the crypt. My breath hitched in my throat. Did you see that? I whispered, my voice trembling. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He had been scanning the room with a look of smug amusement, clearly thinking my mind was playing tricks. It's nothing, just a trick of the light, he said, brushing me off. But then we heard it. Slow, deliberate footsteps, soft but unmistakable. The air around us seemed to thicken, and the temperature dropped sharply. A low hum filled the room, barely audible at first, but growing steadily louder, almost like a chant. Without thinking, we bolted, the lantern swaying wildly in my hands. My heart was pounding in my chest, and every instinct screamed at me to run. But in the chaos, I tripped. My foot caught on something, and I fell hard into the dirt of an open grave. I gasped, struggling to pull myself up, but the weight of something cold and unyielding pressed against my ankle. "Ethan!" I screamed, panic rising in my chest. Ethan turned back, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear. "Sarah." He reached out, grabbing my arm and pulling me up, but I could feel the grip on my ankle tightening, icy fingers wrapping around me like a vice. I don't remember how we made it out of the crypt. Only that we did. The moment we stepped into the woods, I felt the grip loosen, but the terror still gripped my chest. I didn't dare look back, not even when I thought I heard something following us. By the time we made it back to the farmhouse, my breath was ragged, my skin clammy with sweat. Ethan's uncle was waiting for us by the door, his face grim. He didn't need to ask. He had already seen the look in our eyes. "You went to the crypt, didn't you?" he asked, his voice low, almost resigned. Ethan opened his mouth to explain, but the words seemed to die in his throat. "The curse," his uncle muttered, almost to himself. "It demands a life for every person who disturbs its peace. You shouldn't have gone there." I didn't understand what he meant until the next morning. Ethan was gone. His bed was untouched, and when I searched the farmhouse, I found no sign of him. Panic set in as I ran through the house, calling his name, but it was no use. The only thing I found were muddy footprints, leading back toward the woods, toward the crypt. I couldn't bring myself to follow. The crypt seemed to pulse in my mind, its presence hanging over me like a weight. Days passed, and I left Blackstone Valley without a word, but I couldn't escape it. The thought of Ethan, lost forever in the woods, gnawed at me, and then, as I passed through town, I swore I heard something, a faint, unsettling sound like laughter, coming from the direction of the crypt. It wasn't human. It was as if the crypt itself had claimed him, and now it was waiting for me. I don't know if I will ever stop hearing that laugh in the dead of night, or if I'll ever forget what I felt in that crypt. Every time I close my eyes, I see it, the shadow, the icy hand, and Ethan's vacant gaze, lost to the curse. The woods have swallowed him whole, and I fear it's only a matter of time before it comes for me, too.